Well, most people know me as the lead singer of Old Crow Medicine Show. Or maybe they think of me as the guy who sings Wagon Wheel. Or maybe they think of me as the other guy who sings Wagon Wheel. Either way, if you know me, you know that I make country music. But here's the funny thing. If you really know me, you know I'm not really from the country. That when I sing about the things that make up country music with a drawl, that I'm doing so in part using a practice I call reflective mimicry. Now, musicians practice mimicry every time we play a song, because the music on our Billboard charts didn't originate in sound studios, but rather in wilder and more far-flung landscapes, the green pastures of Ireland, and in the copper belt of the Congo, and in a one-room shack on the edge of a field of sweet potatoes in North Carolina. All these ghosts of the musical realm still rattle their chains even now, and this rattling is what we musicians mimic every time we make up a new song and conjure a sonic dream of just what this land called America really sounds like. There's a famous song that goes, "Way down south in the land of cotton, old times there are not forgotten. Look away, look away, look away, Dixieland." I Wish I Was in Dixie became the anthem of the American South. It's synonymous with the Confederacy and with the rebel flag, and for many, with racism. Wikipedia says the song was written by the minstrel Dan Emmett, but ethnomusicologists at Kenyon College say the song was written earlier by Ben and Lou Snowden of Mount Vernon, Ohio, brothers and free persons of color, as a tribute to their parents' lives way down south in the land of cotton. How is it that a song written by the children of a freed slave couple would come to be known as a vestige of racism? This happens not because of mimicry, but rather when we erase the memories of those we mimic by refusing them a place in the circle. Every year at the Country Music Hall of Fame medallion ceremony, stars and executives offer up the song, "Will the Circle Be Unbroken?" as a prayer that country music will last forever. Well, I was at the Country Music Hall of Fame medallion ceremony in 2016 when the great fiddler Charlie Daniels picked up this redemptive theme in his acceptance speech. He said that country music would go on eternally and spoke with reverence for the men and women who laid its foundations, saying, "Those who followed took their music down the two-lane blacktops to the mountains and swamps and to the common folk, whose lives their songs reflected. Through depression and war, they sang their songs about lonesome freight train whistles and love gone wrong, and played the hoedowns and drinking songs that reminded America that no matter how dark the days of war became, that a star-spangled banner was waiting somewhere." Well, I love what Charlie said, because the ones who followed are people like me, and I so appreciate the trail he blazed with a violin bow, because I've been quick to follow down the same rows, singing songs that tell the stories of the hardest working folk, celebrating their tendencies towards transcendence. Well, I left the Country Music Hall of Fame thinking about Charlie Daniels' words, and I hailed a cab. My cab driver was a man from Sudan named Abdu. Like Charlie, Abdu came to Nashville with empty pockets. And like Charlie Daniels, Abdu was raised up in a family structure of age-old tradition and religion, animal husbandry, tending the herds and flocks that sustained his community, though far from the eastern sandhills of Carolina, rather in the rural, arid townships of North Sudan. But war came, and Abdu fled south. And in a refugee camp, he learned to read by holding his Bible up to the lantern light. Abdu sold his possessions, he sold his animals and his land, and he came to Nashville, like Charlie Daniels, with a dream. But in that room full of executives and country stars where was Abdu's place in the circle? It occurred to me that this was a man, not just an African refugee, but a man living the life that country music sings about. But where was his place in the circle? And at the family supper table of country music, where was Abdu's seat? This is a story as old as the Grand Ole Opry, a story of separation and division. We aren't able to see that Charlie Daniels and Abdu are the same because we don't, in fact, as a whole, understand what country music really is and who its architects are. So who are the ancestors of these songs of America's hardest working folk? Picture this scene. 2 porches. A porch for a black musician with a banjo cradled in his or her lap, drumming sweetly under the light of a big southern moon. And nearby, though not too close, another porch for a white musician with a fiddle under the crook of his or her elbow, sawing sweetly under that same big southern moon. Slavery divided us, but in the 18th and 19th centuries, music united us in ways beyond our stratifications. You've heard the saying, the blues had a baby and they called it rock and roll? Well, I say the fiddle and the banjo had a baby. Generations earlier, a biracial child. And they called her the mother of all American song. If you go to the Country Music Hall of Fame, you'll see a small display about minstrelsy. It has both negative and positive associations. I like to think of minstrelsy in a sing-song sort of a way, like this. Minstrelsy is a celebration and a denigration, brought on by the cultural appropriation of a kind of musical miscegenation, bound and determined to both unite and divide the nation. Minstrel songs became a kind of demilitarized zone for 19th century attitudes of racial entrenchment. By singing them, white folk, maybe without even knowing it, were in fact celebrating the undeniable blackness of their America. By the 19th century's end, somewhere between the black porches and the white porches, a banquet table was set and called country music. But at that time, it was set only with places for those allowed inside of the circle. People like Gene Autry. In the Katanga region of what was once called the Belgian Congo, there lived a man named Jean Bosco Mwenda. He worked in the copper mines. And though the work was back-breaking and the pay was poor, on the weekends there was a movie theater in that town that was once called Celesteville and now Lubumbashi. And there on the silver screen, Jean Bosco Mwenda delighted to the films of the singing cowboys. Now, Gene Autry may have never intended to have become an African musical icon, but by singing his brand of cowboy song, rooted as it was in that forbidden racial rub of white, black, and brown, he inspired Jean Bosco Mwenda and countless other African musicians. In their songs, we hear themes so identifiably country that you would think that they had been inspired by Hank Williams or even Charlie Daniels, because in fact they were. Now, obviously, country music doesn't begin with Gene Autry, but rather, Gene Autry, by taking his place in the circle, took what came in part to him from Africa and the Black South, and then went back to Africa to reemerge as something both new and familiar. Mama namwana tumbana tujali bisutele. Namwana tumbana tujali bisutele. Mama namwana tumbana tujali bisutele. Mama namwana peshangai patamina gwenda. Namwana peshangai patamina gwenda. Mama, your mama, 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 your mama, mama. Namwana kuya leo twede bayako. Namwana kuya leo twede bayako. Mama, 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 hi you. Meeting Abdu and dozens of other recently arrived Africans in Nashville, I began to think about how I could help play a part, even in a small way, that I might be able to pull out a chair at the table so that a singer like Jean Bosco Mwenda might be ushered in to take his place in the circle. And now we can celebrate Jean Bosco Mwenda, whose music journeyed from Africa to slave colonies to front porches in the American South, to the cowboy singers, and on back to Africa, and now here on the TEDx stage. We can also see this happen with a song that most of you probably do know, a song that goes, "Rock Me Mama Like a Wagon Wheel," most recently recorded by Darius Rucker. Now, Wikipedia says the song was written by me and Bob Dylan, but the story goes deeper and is even richer than that. I based my song on a 1970s era Bob Dylan song scrap. And when I sought his permission to publish and record my band's version of the tune, Bob said that he didn't write it, that he was basing his version on a rarely heard B-side called "Rock Me Baby" by a 1950s era rhythm and blues king from Memphis named Arthur Big Boy Crudup. But just like Bob, Big Boy said he didn't write the song either, and attributed his version to the 1920s Mississippian turned Chicagoan Big Bill Brunsey. So, from Big Bill to Big Boy to Bob to Ketch to Darius, the song took 90 years to become a #1 record, and in its near century-long gestation saw shared authorship and interpretation among 3 African Americans, a Jewish musical icon, and me, the skinny white kid from New Hampshire. And yet most folks think it's just a country song. Furthermore, they might think that I'm the only guy in the mix who looks like the stereotype of country music. But as you can see, looks are deceiving. One of my equatorial African friends was telling me about growing up in Goma in the volcanic east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. He was raised in a time of war, where food and comfort were hard to come by. When my friend was a small boy, a man came up to him and said, "If you go into those hills and get me the white rocks, I will give you bread." And so my friend did. And then the man said, "If you go into those hills and get me the green rocks, I will give you milk." Well, my friend did that too. And then the man said, "If you go into those hills and get me the red rocks, I will give you medicine." My friend had no idea what these rocks were for until many, many years later, after many, many miles, and many, many towns and camps, and many, many countries and airports, until he finally arrived at his destination, Nashville, and perceived a world that valued diamonds and emeralds and rubies. And just as rare and beautiful are the songs of a people, formed too by time and circumstance, precious to the cultures who inspired them. Far too often, cultural appropriation results in a kind of robbery, where the raw riches of one tribe are the polished commodities of another. When we take their songs, without offering them a place in the circle, we take away their white, their red, their green rocks, offering next to nothing in return. Last year at the elementary school that I helped to open in my neighborhood, Episcopal School of Nashville, our African American music teacher and I, Eric Dozier and I, we rewrote an old gospel song from South Africa and a singer named Jacob Mfarnyana Radebe, kind of a country gospel number called Yesu Utsuhile, or Jesus Has Awoken. We taught this song to our student choir to sing, and we brought them to the ordination to the priesthood of Naomi Tutu, daughter of Desmond. Now, getting American children as young as 4 to sing in Hosha, with its foreign sounds, including the use of glottal tongue clicking, is a challenge in itself. But singing a half-borrowed, half-stolen, rewritten Zulu folk song about Jesus waking up in Nashville seems to me about as strong a representation that I can imagine of the utilitarian force of country music as unifier. But see, it only works when all those tribal identities are held up for all to see. For when we commodify our art, we as Americans turn away from these cultural connections, and music becomes a kind of one-way mirror reflecting only that which we choose to see. But songs, more than like precious gemstones, are sedimentary rock, layered by the language of invaders and refugees, expatriates and thieves, of rebels and of unions and of slaves. Though the family reunion of country music has yet to make a place at the table for Abdu, the circle of song which stretches from origin to zenith has always had a place for him. But it's up to all of us to recognize that when we're singing along to our favorite country song, on the way to work or coming home to have a beer or dancing in the honky-tonk, that we're actually singing a song about a Sudanese cabbie or a folk singer from the Congo or freed slave brothers from Ohio, that country songs are American songs, and that America is a place enriched by the offerings and talents and riches of all the world's people. Or maybe it's better just simply put, like Ray Charles once said it. You take country music, you take black music, you got the same goddamn thing exactly.